against somebody that they should be able to have all of them come together in one basket? I'll go by all of them. And in chess, I think it's checkmate and your move. If you ever played chess before, where are you going to go from there? 3507H3 of Title 44 says that once a form, information request form, is approved and issued a valid current O and B number, no one is authorized to change one period, one dot, one T crossed on that form. No alteration, no moving it around a different way, no asking the questions in a reverse order, nothing. That form is approved with that number. And if anybody who's got that form, who's got that 3-year maximum approval, wants to make a change, they've got to resubmit request to change, called 83C form. And they got to tell them why they're making the change. Now all of a sudden, you see we have a 23-year used O and B number on a form that can only be valid for 3 years, and then we have issues dealing with changes. Now, on the second page of the purple tab, and by the way, they use statistical information against me, and on the bottom of this green tab on number 17 it says statistical methods. It says, does this information collection employ statistical methods? And the answer is no. But yet the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue, through a rogue IRS agent, decided that they could do what this application said they couldn't do. It didn't exist. But it took Congress to write a law. We all knew they couldn't do it, but there was no law telling them they couldn't do it. Do you live in a country, a very important question, where all things not prohibited are allowed? Or do you live in a country where all things not allowed are prohibited? You have to answer that question. I live in the former. I live in a place where I have all the power except that which I don't have. No one else has all the power except that which they gave me. That doesn't exist in my world. It doesn't exist in a lot of people's lives. Now this second page, if you'll notice, it says here, if you are unable to certify, this is at the bottom right above the signature name in kind of a cursive writing, if you are unable to certify compliance with any of these provisions, identify the item below and explain the reasons in item 18 of the supporting statement. And you notice there's nothing written below it. This is on the green tab, which would be the Paperwork Reduction Act Submission 80, CFR 83 and 83I, depending on what year, and 83C form. Now, what they have said here on this certification, what they said that there was nothing that they had to admit to under penalty of perjury. At the top of that page, it says Certification of Paperwork Reduction Act Submissions. Somebody has to certify under penalty of perjury something, or there's no approval number for the 1040 form. So a person can be penalized. And it says, on behalf of this federal agency, is there any doubt at this point that the IRS is a federal agency under the Paperwork Reduction Act? When they use O and B numbers, they put Paperwork Reduction Act statements, and now they're certifying under the Paperwork Reduction Act. There is no question that they have to comply with the Act, but yet the lawyers for the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue have told 3 circuit courts of appeals that the 1040 form does not require a valid O and B number. You think they're going to win on that? I don't think so. No, I don't think so. It goes on. The text of 5 CFR 1329 and related provisions appear at the end of the instructions. The certification is to be made with reference to those regulatory provisions as set forth in the instructions. And it goes, the following is a summary of the topics regarding the proposed collection of information that the certification covers. This is what the certification has to cover. It is necessary for the performance of the agency's action, which means they have to have no other source for the information, which we already know in the application. They say that they do because they're going to say, they're going to look at what you say and compare it to what they already have. That's the only way they could verify it. It avoids unnecessary duplication. It reduces burden on small entities. It uses plain, coherent, and unambiguous terminology that is understandable to respondents. it's supposed to say on it, it's voluntary or mandatory. It's supposed to say on the form, if it's mandatory, citing the statutory authority that makes it mandatory. If you go back and look at every one of those 1040 forms, you will not see any statute ever mentioned. None whatsoever. Its implementation will be consistent and compatible with current reporting and record-keeping practices. It indicates the retention period of record-keeping requirements. Have you ever looked on the 1040 form to see that it talks about how long you need to keep your records on the 1040 form? They cannot possibly put everything on the 1040 form that the law requires them to put on it. They can't do it. Does that mean that we should say, okay, give them a pass? No. We can't give the IRS a pass. They're too big, they're too powerful, and they have too much control. They've got to be regulated, they've got to go by the written law, and they've got to go to jail if they violate it. Period. End of story. And my jail for the IRS, of course, is life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for the IRS. That's not for IRS agents. It's for the IRS. IRS has got to go away. It's got to end. Okay? The messenger, the IRS agent is a messenger doing their job. Some of them take it a little personal. As you can see, someone tried to steal $2,000, or more than one tried to steal. And I'm sorry for them. Something happened in their life a long time ago that led them to that place. And maybe as a result of my case, they'll change. Who knows? Going on, an informed respondent of the information called for. Look on the 1040 form, the very first tab, and tell me if you see why the information is being collected on there. Did they ever tell you that on that blue, the red tab, the very first tab? Just look on that and see. Does it ever say anything in there about why they're getting this information? It never says it anywhere. As closest you could get to it, it says, for Disclosure, Privacy Act, and Paperwork Reduction Act, see page 78. Oh, I opened up a book. I had 78 pages in it, and I saw page 78, and it wasn't there. I mean, what does that mean? Use of information. They're going to use the information you give them on the tax form to verify it's true. That's a criminal regulated act by the IRS. Because you know what, if it's not true? That's a violation of 26 U.S.C. section 72061. False statement. It's a Class E felony, 3-year maximum prison time. All that they're doing with the 1040 form is verifying that you told them the truth. And that means if you didn't tell them the truth, what? It's a penalty of perjury. What's the penalty for perjury? What does everybody think the penalty of perjury is? The reason why the IRS has got to go is because it's a crime going in and it's a crime coming out. You're threatened with the crime to give the information, and you're threatened with the crime when you give them the information. That cannot stand anymore. We're not going to make it if we don't get rid of it. Don't let them penalize you anymore. Be a penalty protester. Burden estimate. Nature of response. Nature and extent of confidentiality. Need to display, this is the one that I brought you through all this because I wanted to be thorough, this last one. Need to display current valid OMB control number. For 23 years, it's 15450074 on the 1040 form. For 23 years, it's 15450085 on the 1040A. The 1040ES for 23 years, 15450087. The 1040EZ for 23 years, 15450675. The 2555, a completely different OMB number until 2000.